Bootleg Kev Podcast, special guest in here, my guy Q, my guy Ramses, a.k.a. Civic Cipher.
What up, though?
For people who don't know what Civic Cipher is, Ramses, I'll let you educate the people.
Civic Cipher is...
You should put the mic in front of you too, Ramses.
It is a radio show that exists to give the hip-hop community a little bit more insight into the goings-on politically in this country and to give a voice to the activist element that moves to create a better day-to-day life for Black and brown, marginalized, impoverished communities, et cetera.
What was the inspiration for starting the show?
Really, it was 2020, folks getting out on the street and protesting, let us know that there was a gaping hole in the media space.
Yes.
I remember that. Anyway.
Tell me more about the gaping hole.
No, I'm not going to tell you about that. You should talk about that.
Anyway, there was a gaping hole in the media space.
Sure. Yes. And in the media space, we are both DJs and broadcasters. I'm talking to you like you don't know this, but
you got to tell everybody else. For people who don't know, Ramses is like my best friend in the entire world. Best man at my wedding.
Yes.
Yes.
I've known Kevin since he was 3 years old.
Yes.
Yeah. So the reason Bootleg Kev is all into hip hop.
This is true. It's all him. It's all his fault. It's literally his fault. Yeah. It's his fault.
Yeah. We used to play guys when we were little. Little toys.
Not play with guys.
No, that was what you called it. You called it guys. We used to
play
guys. Toys.
Yeah, like action figures.
Action figures.
Yes.
Yeah, so lifelong friend, best friend. But yeah, in the media space, there wasn't anyone talking about what was going on in the streets. No one giving a voice to the movement. No one talking about explaining the concepts. Defund the police. How do we create programs to kind of mitigate economic instability and bring just an activist element to the airwaves. We was just, if you would have turned on the radio at the time, it was just rapping and dancing and singing and fashion. And
it was just very like, obviously in radio, there's not a lot of time or space to really dive into those conversations.
Right. And
outside of surface level things.
Right. And so that's exactly what we pushed back against because, it's one thing, Q says it a lot better, but I'll try to get you started. It's one thing to, profit from Black culture because, a lot of folks at the top, they didn't really look like the community whose culture.
Mostly nobody at the top.
There you go.
Mostly,
exactly. So a lot of them people were benefiting from it, but they didn't really have a vested interest in whatever outcomes took place on the street. And we fought against that imbalance. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we take a moment, we turn the songs off, we turn the music off, we have conversations, we educate not just Black and brown people, but allies
everybody
to those
who
communities,
listens, yeah.
Right? Anybody who listens to hip hop, we figured they could be an ally to Black and brown communities. They need to understand the conversations, the struggles, the challenges, and then by having those conversations long form in spaces where people are, because it's hard for folks to seek out programs like ours. We don't seek out Vietnamese programming, no disrespect, but I don't feel like it's creative for me. So I don't expect, non-Black people to seek out what would be considered Black programming if they don't feel like it's for them.
Right.
So by putting it in the media space where hip-hop music is consumed, Black culture is consumed, it feels, in our opinion, feels a little bit more accessible for our listeners. And so this is how we've been able to connect with, radio stations around the country, listeners around the country.
It's also available in podcast form, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, we've been doing that. We've been doing, and then since then, of course, the Black Information Network, which is a subsidiary of iHeartMedia, has reached out and they've kind of tapped on us to kind of expand the show. Mm-hmm. And then I do a podcast for them as well. So it's been a wild ride, but we're making some progress.
Q, how do you feel like is like in terms of just like filling in the space that is missing? That there really wasn't anything sort of that catered to the issues or. I think your guys' mission before, and I don't know why, obviously I'm sure in certain markets, there's like one-offs of people who do like shows like this, but aren't necessarily trying to take the national approach to it. So
the interesting thing, Kev, is that our initial push wasn't for us to do a show.
Right.
So it's hard to tell the story and leave that part out. We wasn't trying to jump, in front of the mic or in front of the camera.
Ramses, make sure your mic's turned down a little. There you go.
To tell the story.
Yeah.
We just thought somebody should.
Right.
So when we first had that first meeting with the PD, it was like, hey, we got some unrated space overnight that's running a.
Are you talking about at the Beat?
Yeah.
That's running
KNRJ in Arizona?
Yes, sir. That's
Now the
running
Bounce?
That's now the Bounce.
We're the reason that
They changed their name because they look crazy?
Ramses also owns the Beat.
Trademark, yeah.
So there's that.
What?
Yeah. Ramses owns the Beat, so they had to change the whole situation. And we can talk about that too. But we were in the streets, Kevin. You know this more than a lot of people. When everything was happening in 2020, a lot of people were outside with their kids, with their families. Like, listen, there's some things that are going on that have been going on for so long, and we just kind of collectively all over it.
Yeah, for sure.
But the way that it was covered on television and even on some broadcast media was just not that. It called people rioters and protesters. I mean, not protesters, but rioters and looters.
Right.
Instead of protesters. So Ramses' idea was, listen, there's some people out there whose voice only goes as far as a bullhorn.
Right.
It would be cool if we can just have them come on the radio
Right.
and have a place where they can say their piece and tell their story.
Right.
And we got some unrated time overnight that's running, don't drink and drive ads or something.
Right.
Where we could, talk about that.
Right.
And the station was initially like, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Yeah, we should put something together. And then a month went by. And then a couple months went by. And then a few months went by. And just in the spirit of follow-up, Ramses went and had a meeting with, I'll let you say the gentleman's name.
Frederico.
Our PD at the time. Hey, remember that thing we talked about that everybody said would be a good idea? Are we still going to do that?
Yeah.
And there's so many things they could have said back to us, Kev, that we would have just had to take on the chin and run with. Like, hey, you guys, great idea, but we don't want to do anything divisive. Hey, guys, wonderful concept you guys talked about, but we don't really do political in this space. Had they said something like that, we'd have thought it was BS,
but
we could have took that on the chin.
Yeah.
What they said, or what he said more specifically, was, we don't want to do a black show.
Wow.
And the reason why that part of the story is important, because Civic Cipher now seems like, hey, those guys had a great plan and they ran the play and it worked. That's not what happened.
Right.
We pitched an idea to the station. They told us initially, okay.
And this is at the time, still is a hip hop station.
Yes.
But it's a hip hop station.
It's a hip hop station
that plays nothing but black music.
Nothing but black music at the time.
That was my charge.
In Phoenix.
Yes.
My charge was that, a station that plays 70% black artists and 100% black music should also align itself, be an ally to a community in need where we're hurting, people are dying, we're coming together, we're trying to change so that we can create a better path forward for our children.
Right.
I'm a father.
What's Frederico doing now? Selling real estate like every other bum-ass PD out there that can't get a job?
Hey, man, look, I haven't kept up. I will say this because it's important to say it. I talked to Fred. He wished me well on my journey, and I will leave it there. But
yeah, man.
I do want to say this, too. Let me say this because, for folks that aren't familiar with Civic Cipher, was talking about, Kev listening to my CD books. After Fred and I had our meeting, I don't even think you know this. You have to bear in mind, I've been a radio broadcaster my whole adult career up to that point. And when I decided to resign after that meeting, I had to come to terms with the fact that I might never broadcast again. And that's a lot to come to terms with because in Phoenix, I was kind of, at that time, especially
so
big name.
For people who don't know, you decided to resign after they said, we're not going to put the show on.
He said, Ramses, I don't want to do a
The way
black
that they
show.
said it.
I don't want to do a black show.
Right. It had to do with the way they said it.
Right. So I wrote my resignation letter, but I addressed it to the city of Phoenix.
Right.
Because the Phoenix had given me my ratings. Phoenix had kept me on the air across multiple stations and so forth. But I did make one phone call before I posted that. And I called you, and you were in Mexico at the time with your wife. And I read that to you. I remember I was crying.
Yeah.
I was in, because you imagine.
When I got to your house, you were still crying.
Yeah, the emotion that goes into that. And I didn't know what was coming next, but I read that letter to you, and you was like, there's no way you can write that and not post it.
Yeah.
I posted it, and then got shared, went viral. The trades picked it up. Everyone picked it up, and then PD started reaching out around the country saying, hey, we'd like to carry that show. And then, of course, the podcast partnership with iHeart helped blow it up even more, and then the other shows that I ended up doing, it just led to sort of this snowball effect. So
So we had to create that on the spot. When these people started reaching out,
We had no name.
there was no show. The show didn't exist. We just had an
Right.
idea. But Ramses initially resigned both of us from the beat. Like, okay, we don't work here no more.
Right.
And then called me and told me. And of course, right. But just he was that compelled. He felt that strong in that moment. Like, imagine looking at for the cameras. Imagine looking at him. We're not going to do a black show.
Right.
On the hip hop station. Like
That's it's a crazy thing to say out loud.
Yeah.
To me especially.
You know what I'm saying? So that decision kind of made itself, Kev, and then it was time to get to work.
Yeah.
Q, I need you to commit to doing this with me. I don't know what it's going to become because it's worked out now. We might top of the year we might be on almost 70 stations.
Yeah.
So it's worked out now. So it seemed like we had a plan and we ran the play. Like, nah, it was just the station made a decision for us. We don't want to do a black show. Made the choice for us. What happened after that, it just kind of came together. So if you believe in God or the universe or, whatever your belief system is, that's kind of where those thanks go. Because we had no idea. In our minds, we're never going to work in radio again. Because Ramses's letter burned the station down. He named names. It was very, very specific, but had to be done in that way. Yeah. But we figured, okay, once this is published, I don't know how we're going to do, as far as the career thing after this.
Yeah.
So once the letter goes viral, did they ever they never even replied to it or try to
I had a brief line of communication to the general manager of the station because we're at a point.
What's his name again?
Paul Holton.
Okay, what's the other guy's name that's always there? The other old dude that's been there forever.
Is it Michael?
Michael Malice.
Oh yeah, he was gone by that time.
Okay.
So Michael wasn't involved. But anyway, I had a brief line of communication because we're going back and forth in the newspaper and in the trades. And they're saying it's this, I'm saying it's that. You know what I mean? And of course, they have a whole business to protect. So they don't mind reframing the conversation, the narrative around.
They even tried to get somebody else to do the show.
Yeah.
After
I think they hired Cedric Ceballos. Shout out to Ced, that's my guy.
Yeah.
But they hired him to do it, and then I think it was like Jackie Morales is another name out in Arizona. Some folks to try to pick up the slack because the community had since charged that station with, hey, you should be doing what this guy resigned about. You know what I mean? So, everybody ended up winning. And again, I kept a brief line of communication open with Paul. I still believe Paul to be, friendly with me, but obviously because of where he works and the situation and circumstance, he probably can't talk to me. And I honestly, I believe that a lot of those people really had good intentions. It was just one person who made the wrong decision at the wrong time and said it the wrong way to the wrong person.
Yeah.
Because I was the president of the Black Student Union in college, the NAACP at BSU. This isn't new to me. I've been on this path for my whole life, trying to make sure everything is fair and equal. Because, me and you, Kev, we reached heights from playing with toys as a little kid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We reached heights we'd have never thought. And for me, obviously it comes with an additional charge. For you too, you've been real good about that, but it comes with a charge of, okay, now we have to make sure that people that don't make it to this height, we're doing right by them. We're making the world a little bit better place, a little bit more accessible, and helping change the narrative so that we leave a legacy that's not just we made some bread.
Hey, what up, y'all? Bootleg Kev. Got to stop the interview to tell you about our newest sponsor, man. Shout out to the homies at Hardin, Las Vegas. That's right, the #1 dispensary in the whole state of Nevada, let alone in the whole fucking country. So many choices of premium cannabis, ladies and gentlemen. It is like, how can I put this? You walk into it, you go to Hardin in Las Vegas. When you're on vacation, when you're out there tricking off, whatever you're doing, stop off at Hardin, tell them I sent you, be like, yo, Bootleg Kev sent me. They're going to take care of you at Hardin. When I say selection, I mean selection of the best premium cannabis in the world, the best dispensary. There's a reason why Hardin is world famous. Follow them right now, Hardin_Las Vegas. Go to their website, hardinlasvegas.com. That's JARDIN_Las Vegas. When you're in Vegas, you have to pull up to Hardin. Tell them I sent you and get high off your fucking face. I don't even know what that means. How do you get high off of your face? Whatever. Melt your fucking face off with some of that good Hardin, y'all. Go follow them one more time. That's Hardin_Las Vegas. Let's get back to the interview. So how did you end up? So you ended up buying the name The Beat?
Trademarking it, yeah. So.
In what capacity? No one, because there's I mean, a lot of radio stations.
So
there's
a
like
different-
major companies that own the beat.
Sure. So there's it's funny because I'm learning all this stuff on the fly. In fact, I got a funny story to tell you about trademarks. But so there's a way you can trademark a name locally, like in a state.
Right.
And then there's a way that you can trademark something federally. And it's basically protecting a brand or a name or a concept or something like that. So I didn't have to do too much anything. And the truth be told, we have a friend. We all three of us have a friend named C who trademarked it for me in my name and gave it to me as a gift. Just saying, listen, man, since you resigned, I went ahead and trademarked that for you.
Is
so
it 101 the beat or just the beat?
101 the beat, yeah. So the next time that name is heard in Arizona, it'll be because you owned it. And he was like, listen, if you want a radio station, we can talk about buying you a station, getting you some, placement or whatever. So, he's just being real friendly, you know what I mean? But I do own the name, so no one else can use it. In terms of the federal trademarks.
Is that why they changed their name?
They changed the name because the backlash from their black employee, who's the most tenured, who had the most, clicks on the website, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Had resigned in such public fashion over allegations that they weren't being fair to the community. They were just taking money and not giving anything back. And that was my charge. Listen, if you're not a black person, but you partake in black culture, the way I say it is we don't mind if you eat from our table. Just make sure you save us a seat. I think that that's more than fair.
Right.
It's a more than fair charge to anybody who partakes in black culture and uses it to make money. Just imagine that these are human beings who actually have to live and die in order for these stories to exist. And we don't want to live this. We weren't just born to die and sell dope and struggle. That's not fair. And if you are profiting off of that pain, you know what I'm saying? If we ask for a seat at the table, we only asked for 30 minutes initially.
Right.
In the middle
And
of the
that's 30
night
minutes
with
a
no
week,
ratings.
people.
And it didn't even have to be
30
us.
minutes a week, yeah.
30 minutes a week.
And it didn't even have to be us on the station.
Yeah.
It could have been anybody else. We would have just made sure that we got the guest book.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So that's been my charge. But, after that backlash, the station...
rebranded.
Yeah, they had to make some changes.
Are they aware
Because every
that
time you Googled 101 the beat, the story
That's what
came
came
up.
up first.
are they aware that you own that now?
They will be after they hear this. I didn't have no reason to stun on nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to do good work, and I believe now those people, they learned a lesson. I worked with them for a long time. They weren't bad people. They just made a bad call again. But they've since done a couple of things that shows they're committed to making things right. So I don't want to keep beating up on them, but I got to tell the story how it went. So if I say your name in the interview, it's because that's how it happened. You know what I mean? So yeah, man. But for now, I'm focused on making sure that we have conversations that are dedicated to healing, conversations dedicated to, giving insight into what different people's experiences might be like, trying to create more empathetic allies. We feel like we'll find allies for the plight of black and brown people in the spaces where we broadcast and, podcast as well. And we need to give them insight so that when they go home for Thanksgiving and they sit in their uncle's presence or their dad's presence, they know how to have conversations that will show that, okay, there's a different way of looking at this, Pops. You know what I'm saying? These people actually have some other, you know what I'm saying? And so we lean on a lot of great thinkers. I never thought I was a DJ. I never thought I'd be in this position. We both were. He was DJing for the Phoenix Suns. You know what I'm saying? So who's to say, what tomorrow holds? But when the call comes and you're the only person holding the ball, what do? You run with the ball. So, that's how we ended up, here. And to piggyback off of that, we've done our best to grow it even more.
Right.
So again, I mentioned the BIN Daily podcast, making sure we have platforms to tell these stories. But Q, hopefully I'm not putting your business out there, but he recently acquired Hip Hop Weekly, the media imprint. Yeah, so that's his now, and he can tell stories how they deserve to be told. I know you're shaping it up. Don't let me speak for you.
No, I mean we plan to relaunch top of the year, and a bunch of people that we know and a bunch of people we don't know, freelancers, journalists, photographers, and up and coming artists will have a space that kind of always existed but didn't have the light that it deserved.
Right.
So just kind of rebranding that magazine.
Because Hip Hop Weekly is kind of like a, it's would you say it's kind of like the tabloid version of it's kind of like Hollywood Unlocked, but in a magazine form.
Yeah, kind of before all these
before
other
all that
spaces
was
existed.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and it was still in print.
It'd be next to Us Weekly.
Yeah.
And, all that stuff.
So coming back to the digital space with something that was a printed magazine.
Right.
And really creating a new platform for not just creators, but artists that artists are creators, but not just the people who capture the stories, but the people that create them.
Right.
So, rebranding and relaunching, doing covers again, like really giving people something to read. And
yeah, because the covers
hiring
prior,
actual
I think, were
journalists.
very like it was like a bunch of stuff going on the cover.
I mean, you said it. It was just
Yeah.
like how if you go see an Us Weekly magazine at the grocery store now, like a bunch of headlines.
Yeah.
We're trying to do more classic covers.
I was gonna say the headline
Real
model is
journalists,
like
real
a little.
stories.
It's a little harder to, but the internet, it's like
Yeah.
it's like harder to keep up if you're printing, because by the time it gets printed, who knows how?
The stories change, evolve.
Yeah, especially with the Kanye shit. It's like every other day,
Yes,
like,
sir.
we record our show a day ahead of time, and it's like, Jesus, we can't even keep up with all the wild shit happening with this guy. Speaking of that, you own White Lives Matter.
Indeed, yeah. So,
So for people who don't know,
so this is the other part I was going to tell you.
you technically own the term White Lives Matter,
Right.
the trademark.
So that's a federal trademark that applies to the whole United States of America. So yeah, if you were to go and look it up, it's owned by Civic Cipher LLC. We acquired the trademark from an individual in our orbit who procured that and then also filed for All Lives Matter federally because they weren't trademarked.
Right.
Funnily enough. And so this person did that and wanted to ensure that the right people would benefit from those, sayings. And we ultimately ended up acquiring it through our lawyer, Morris. So now we are the deciders of who profits from those terms, White Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. So if you ever see any individual selling that shirt, it's either illegal or they had to come down our street and knock on our door, and we had to negotiate the terms of that sale.
So when are you suing Kanye West?
Well, if Kanye West or any other person decides to sell,
Because he hasn't sold any of those. He hasn't sold those yet, right?
Hadn't sold any
so if he
shirts yet.
decides to sell something, he will either have to get clearance or he has to face our trademark attorney.
Yeah, because I
Morris.
saw he was just giving away the shirts in Skid Row. He was just passing them out to homeless
So
people.
then that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
in terms of profiting off of a statement that is intended to dilute the significance and the thrust of a statement as affirming as Black Lives Matter, the right people should decide
Who gets money off of that?
who gets money off of that exactly. If you wanted to affirm for yourself that White Lives Matter in your own path through life, that is your right. You can paint it on your shirt. No one can stop you. But as soon as you want to sell it, you are infringing on Civic Cipher LLC's federally protected trademark, and you will be sued.
Wow.
Yes.
Any
You can look it up
Any
right
lawsuits yet?
No. We just sent out cease and desist to people that were selling bootleg versions of that stuff. Oh, I didn't send them out. The lawyers did. We're not lawyers.
Somebody was selling fake White Lives Matter shirts.
Oh yeah. People sell, and then the All Lives Matter too. Once that comes back, the C&Ds go out, and then if you ever do see a person selling them, again, they came and they knocked on our door. We worked it out, and
Or it's
then
illegal.
If we choose to donate that money,
Or it's illegal.
or whatever. If we choose to donate that to certain organizations or whatever, then that is our right, and we can decide how that money gets spent, and hopefully it'll be for the betterment of the communities most impacted by folks most likely to wear those shirts. So, there's your catch-22. We learned from Byron Allen that you want to own the game, not the game piece. And so, and just again, some fortunate sequence of events took place, and we ended up with sort of the hot topic of the day, this White Lives Matter thing. And you could look it up yourself. You'll see Civic Cipher Studios, the address, everything is all there.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on just everything Kanye from the last 2 weeks or so? It's been a rough 2 weeks.
I'll let Q jump on that.
It's been a lot. It started with the White Lives Matter thing, which was like, okay, this guy's. I felt like he was just trolling for the wrong reasons.
It's real hurtful.
Yeah.
But no, Q's got some interesting thoughts.
Drink Champs interview is wild.
Wild.
Yeah.
Kanye West is kind of the leader of a really, really interesting movement, right? There's a time in the last several years where groupthink,
Right.
right, being contrarian to groupthink is being accepted as intelligence.
Right.
If I just think the opposite of what everybody else is thinking, then I'm gonna just show everybody how on top of it I am. No research, no studying, no information, just whatever everybody seems to be saying.
Say the opposite.
I'm gonna say the opposite, and I'm gonna show you guys how free thinking I am.
Right.
Which isn't irresponsible if you just work down the street at Panda Express and that's just what you want to get off your chest. But when you have the stature and the influence of someone like Mr. West,
he's probably the most influential human being ever.
It's grossly irresponsible.
Yeah.
And if you've noticed, he's developed a bit of a zealot following where in their minds, he can't do or say anything wrong, even if it's blatantly and flagrantly untrue. We can't agree on what's facts anymore.
I think people are just more likely to forgive Kanye because they love his music so much.
Yeah, there's that.
And they love his shoes, but I feel like that only goes so far, and I think he might have hit that. He might have hit that wall of like people.
He has some people with him though, Kev, that want to also be viewed as leaders in the free thought space,
right?
And they think that by again just bucking the trend, whatever I'm contrarian about in my circles and on Instagram and on Twitter, I can be viewed as free thinking and of a higher level of intelligence just by saying the opposite of whatever is popular accepted opinion, even when popular accepted opinion is based on fact.
Right.
I'm just going to say the opposite so I can show you guys how woke and learned I am.
Right.
And he's the leader of that school. And
yeah,
he really, really is, as you can see,
I think he's kind of spinning out of control,
with trying to come across as a leader. It's
pretty wild. Well, because technically he is a leader. The problem is he doesn't carry himself like he has those responsibilities.
Yeah.
And like, I think that some of the anti-Semitic shit he's saying is crazy.
It's so hurtful.
It's just wild.
Yeah. And
so like he had said something like Jewish people have controlled black voices for so long. And if you feel that way, can't you just say, black people, it's time we start controlling our voices without mentioning
someone else down.
Yes.
without mentioning another.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially when you're the self-proclaimed richest black man in the history of the United States. You, sir, can absolutely create that space where we own our own stories, our own voice, and our own platform.
Right. Like even with the Trump thing, like I understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to push the line that says, hey, the Democratic Party has been taking advantage of black voters this whole entire time. Let me show y'all you don't have to. Like when he really explained it out, I was like, well, I get what he's trying to do. But the way he did it.
You can do that without aligning
you could just
yourself
say it,
with Buddy.
Or you could say it without looking like you're hug. Like he looked like a kid who met his favorite celebrity.
I mean, he called the guy a father figure. He was like his dad. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah. And so I think like Kanye is just very, he's just very, the way he communicates what he thinks to be right is just so short-sighted, and it's just very like, it's like, dude, like the White Lives Matter thing. He's like, I think what did he say? He said, Black Lives Matter was a scam. There, I ended it. And it's like, you could be very, critical of Black Lives Matter, the organization,
Yes.
as Kanye West,
Yes.
and point out a lot of shit. But what is the point of doing that while also putting on a shirt that says White Lives Matter?
I want to add to that though, because I hear a lot of that stuff, but for someone in that position, you have to bear in mind that.
Well, there's a bunch of different Black Lives Matter organizations.
Let me say this. Okay, so I come from the tradition of, so my teacher, Dr. Camille Westenberg.
Yeah.
You know her.
Shout out Dr. Westenberg.
Shout out Dr. Westenberg. Made sure that I learned what movements look like, what struggles look like. You know what I mean? So we learned from the Panthers. We learned from, all these organizations, these individuals with groups and movements around them. The Stokeleys, the Baldwins, James Baldwin, all these folks, right? And these folks that had contrarian opinions that ran against what was popular in the country at the time. And, people used every trick in the book to frame folks as being this, that, or the other.
Right.
just because, these are information wars, right? It's a matter of influencing public opinion. If you can make Dr. King look like the most evil human being who ever lived, when Dr. King was alive, most people opposed his views. Most. Now it's all good because he's been rebranded, right? So when people talk bad about BLM, the organization, I take that with a grain of salt. I also add to it that BLM has done a lot since Trayvon Martin died in 2012.
Right. It's been around since then, yeah.
Right. And they've done a lot of good things. And every organization deserves to be able to grow up. The Kennedys, the great American family, they got their money, they got their start in Prohibition. In Prohibition, they were selling illegal products in the United States of America. That's how they got their money. Were able to attain political status in this country. They say most every fortune is built on the back of a crime or something like that. There's a popular saying, which I don't believe necessarily that BLM has done anything criminal. They've just done things that perhaps most folks don't agree with in terms of how things should be spent. Based on what I've read, they haven't robbed any banks or killed any people or anything.
Yeah,
like
I just
that.
think that there's a lot of criticism. A lot of the victims that have obviously been highly publicized, that has fueled their movement, have not reaped the benefits.
Sure. And that's you're saying the
as
same
to where
thing as
there's
me.
a lot of the higher ups in Black Lives Matter who are millionaires now
You're saying-
weren't millionaires prior to this.
You're saying the same thing as me. So in terms of your opinion on how they spend money,
it's not illegal. Like you said, they're not criminals.
Right. So who's to say? But,
I know this.
For a person like Kanye West to be so critical of something without giving it context, without knowing himself, without having walked in those shoes.
Right.
I feel like that's kind of a tough. I remember reading a story about BLM. And I don't want to act like the great defender of BLM, but I just don't hear the other side of it in the media. And because I've seen this in history, again, I take it with a grain of salt. But the other side of this is, one of the stories that I've seen was BLM bought a house, a mansion, something like this. This is how it was framed. And then I had to do some investigation because obviously we do the show.
Right.
We have to
You have to talk about
this
it,
stuff, right? I did some investigation, and the way BLM was looking at that purchase was like, no, this was a facility. We have to have a place that's protected where they can't put bugs on the wall and tap stuff. We can't be renting a place. We can't, we have to have something with a gate. We have to, with certain requirements where we can house people, whatever. And this place afforded us all of these things that we needed. And so this was a reasonable purchase for a business like ours, or for a movement organization like ours.
Right.
And for anyone else that had an opinion prior to reading that article, they would look at it like, oh, okay, of course, these black people got this money and now they're spending it. They're throwing parties or whatever. And that's the way the article framed it. But when you dig it one layer deeper, ask one person a question, and you get the little bit more context, you're like, okay, that makes sense. It's entirely reasonable. And it's not this nefarious operation. And so again, Kanye West or whoever else who has been critical, but this is the person we're talking about right now, him saying these things, again, is very hurtful because it's very easy to support someone black. If you're the same Kanye West who goes on the news and says George Bush doesn't care about black people, these are my people out here. When my people go in the store, they say that they're looting. But when it's white people that go into the store, this is about Katrina, him talking about Katrina. When white people go in the store, they're getting supplies because they're desperate. When my people go in the store, they're looting. Kanye West said that. And then he said George Bush doesn't care about black people. I remember watching that.
Yeah.
I remember watching that. So if that's the same person who can give a little bit of grace and understanding and context to a conversation, for him to then take it all away from BLM, who's been active on the street. I haven't seen Kanye West in any protest.
Clearly not the same person, though.
But yeah, sure. But I'm holding him to that standard that he set for himself, right? I've seen BLM since 2012. I've been at the library with these people in small little meetings with Dr. Westenberg because I'm the person on the radio in my city.
Hey, we got to stop the interview real quick to tell you about our partners at Odd Socks, our presenting sponsor here at the Bootleg Podcast. Listen, Christmas time is approaching faster than you think. I mean, we're like fucking a month and a half away or some shit, whatever. Get some Odd Socks for your folks. Go to oddsocksofficial.com, use the promo code BOOTLEG, and you'll save 20% off at checkout. The most comfortable socks in the world. That's right. We got some Scarface socks. They got WWE. You know what I mean? They also got the Cheech and Chongs. They also got the Flamin' Hots for you hot Cheeto-eating fucks out there. My favorite, just the Odd Socks Basics. They're just so comfy. literally the most comfortable sock in the world. I'm holding the fucking sock right now. You can save 20% off. Plus, they got boxers now, baby. All right? Go to oddsocksofficial.com. Promo code bootleg at checkout. Save 20% off and support our family at Odd Socks and the podcast at the same fucking time. Let's get back to the interview. And there's very like localized chapters.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's like a Black Lives Matter LA. There's a Black Lives Matter Phoenix.
Metro,
there's a Black Lives Matter
Shout out
Memphis.
Zara,
There's-
Mimi, Kiki.
So all of those are
Keisha.
very like separate from. I think you can't just paint the whole thing with one brush.
Right.
But I do think that in the same way we were talking, like Candace Owens is capitalizing off of everything. She's looking at it through. I think a lot of people are doing it on the other side too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not impossible that these things.
Because I know this. I just talked to Killer Mike. So I call Killer Mike and I'm like, yo, where do I donate my money? And if Killer Mike tells me, don't donate it there, donate it here, I'm like, cool.
Listen, I just talked to Dr. Camilla Westenberg, and I tell you what, if somebody comes down my street and says, hey, we would like to acquire the federal trademark to create and produce and sell
White Lives Matter
anything
shirts.
that says White Lives Matter on it, I know that the NAACP is ready and willing to receive a check from Civic Cipher LLC. Right. You know what I'm saying? And then I know some people, like you said, there are local chapters, the people that I've seen do the work, the people that inspired Civic Cipher. There's a woman named Zara Tacola. You know, I love her to death. She's my shero. You know, what she's doing, she has a 501c3. They do grassroots work in Arizona. And, you know, nationally, she has a national profile. I would love to donate money to her because I believe in her mission.
Because you know her. I was going to say, if people want to help out, how do they vet where they should put their money?
Well, you can start by donating to Civic Cipher. You can hit civiccipher.com because we are on it. You know, I risked my whole career to bring some, like I was the man, I was doing my thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm telling you like I got to convince you, but you know, we was there together, right? But we have a segment on our show called Baba, Become a Better Ally, right? It comes from one of the African languages, it means father as well. So sort of a reference to like guidance or whatever.
Right.
But become a better ally. And that segment, we often talk about the NAACP, right? So it's the oldest, most established organization that moves in such a way to try to create more opportunities and more political strength for impoverished communities, Black and brown. You know,
Right.
we do believe in unity between all marginalized groups of people. So you hear me say Black and brown a lot. But I also mean, you know, our AAPI brothers and sisters. I mean our Native brothers and sisters, Indigenous brothers and sisters, our LGBTQIA plus brothers and sisters. Anybody, if
You nailed it.
If you were born, if you feel like you were born with a
Yeah.
strike against you, and you want to join a movement where love is at the center of the conversation, where we are trying to make sure everybody has a voice and is heard and is protected, and there's equality. As far as we can take that, then that's the movement that you want to be on. And we didn't ask to be in this position again, you know, with all these stations carrying our message around this whole entire country. But now that we're here, there's an even greater responsibility to be true to it. And, you know, if they bury my sons carry me on my last day and they bury me in the ground, and the last thing I did was record an episode of Civic Cipher, I'd still say this was a life well lived.
Has there been anything, because I know you guys were doing some conversations about like the vaccine, and obviously there was a lot of hesitancy within the, you know, Black and brown community to get the vaccine.
Sure.
It turns out a lot of the hesitancy was maybe well warranted.
Maybe. I never found that to be true in the studies that I've done.
Well, I was going to ask, like, if you guys do an episode on something and then kind of like the facts evolve.
Oh yeah, we have
You
to
guys
eat
will,
crow
like,
all the
revisit,
time. We have
right?
to eat crow.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's beyond revisiting.
'Cause that's important.
It's full out. We were wrong. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And
we
there's
have
no
to go on and
hesitancy
say
with
that. Yeah.
And that's, I think that's important too, because a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I want to say before we move on, that with lives matter, right? Before we move on from that, Black Lives Matter is a statement
That is true.
that is true.
Correct.
And a lot of the reason why, you know, Ramses and I go back and forth, I don't do a lot of the apologizing or explaining on behalf of the organization because Kevin, Quentin, and Ramses
Right.
can be scrutinized Our LLCs can be scrutinized. Our companies can be scrutinized and be wrong and make mistakes.
Right.
Black Lives Matter, period, as a statement
It's true.
is true.
Yeah.
So I don't even have to talk about .org.
Right.
And all of the other Lives Matter statements came just to oppose the statement,
Right.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I was just talking to Akon about it, and that's what I was saying. I was like, the origin of this was because obviously Black lives don't matter as much as everyone else's lives.
Correct.
So it's like Black Lives Matter as a statement is 100% true, and Kanye's got to be smart enough to realize the connotations that the word white lives matter. No one was saying that but now they're saying it to combat an obvious
the same with Blue
black eye
Lives
on the
Matter.
country. Yeah.
The same with All Lives Matter. It was those statements were born just to oppose the statement Black Lives Matter, not to oppose the organization or anything wrong that they did. Right. So that's why it hits the way that it does, because we know where those statements were born from, why they were even created, why people say them. They say them to stand in opposition to the statement that black people's lives are important and that they're worthy of existing.
Yeah, they're worthy of equality.
During Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we don't argue
All
that
cancer
multiple
awareness.
sclerosis is also worth talking about.
Right.
We don't do that. When it's Save the Whales, we don't talk about, the birds aren't migrating. Like, we don't do that with anything else.
No, you're right.
You know what I mean? So the reason why I get so disappointed and passionate and angry about it is because of what you said. He's smart enough to know that, and still rides this horse of really not just division, but intentional attention mongering for statements that are flagrantly opposed to something so simple in its nature. Right? If you're such a free thinker, how come if we check the boxes on the points that you make, they line up so accurately and in such perfect alignment with white supremacist agendas, with aligning yourself with people like Homegirl who, for the dollar,
Candace
will
Owens,
get on a mic and say anything, with dude in a red hat. Like, you can make your free thinking statements without having to then attach yourself to things that are so opposed to our children being able to go to school and be okay.
Happy birthday, millennium.
You know what I'm saying? That's why I get so passionate and upset about it. My kids are black and Mexican. And you wearing the MAGA hat for the dude whose whole campaign was build the wall to keep Mexican people out? Like, dog, really? Fam? So George Bush hates black people or doesn't care about black people, and that was your stance. But now white lives matter, and you're trolling. And then on the very, very wild drinks,
the Drink Champs show was crazy.
He tripled down on his anti-Semitic rhetoric. Like, really, bro?
Yeah, it's rough, especially to me.
So before we moved
to
on
me, the
from that, I
craziest
wanted
Kanye shit was the George Floyd shit. I was just like,
bro, for what?
Yeah.
And then your source material on that
is a Candace Owens
documentary. The lady who's been she's gone out of her way since the man died to tell us how awful he was, as if that makes the fact that the man killed him okay.
Right. Like, it doesn't matter. All like they say, all lives matter.
Yeah.
Right? Well, so does the guy who had a drug problem's life matter? Who has a bad criminal?
That's all I'm saying.
All lives matter until
do they?
All lives are immigrants or prisoners or convicts, and criminals.
That's. I'm glad you said that, because we feel like, especially on the show, we feel like people deserve a little dignity. We don't feel like anybody is simply the worst thing they've ever done. People deserve to be forgiven. We're not the biggest fans of cancel culture, you know what I mean? Because there's people who make mistakes, make honest mistakes.
Right.
And, if we condemn everyone who makes a mistake to, the margins of society, then they're just going to find community within each other, and then we bolster the opposition.
Hey guys, we got to stop the interview to tell you about our good folks over at BlueChew.com. That's right. Listen, you got to go to Blue Chew right now. Sign up for Blue Chew with the promo code Bootleg. You're going to get your first month for free. Blue Chew, the same active ingredient as Viagra and as Cialis, but in a chewable form. That's right. You pop the Blue Chew, chew that thing, wash it down with your beverage of choice, and then get to work with that hard fucking cock of yours. Your dick is going to be harder than trigonometry was in high school, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be fucking raw. Like, Ryu in Street Fighter, he'd be like, Hadouken, and he does the motherfucking, this is going to be your dick. It's going to be like Ryu's fucking uppercut. You know what I'm saying? God bless whoever's on the receiving end of that. Consensually, of course. They're going to thank you for taking the Blue Chew. So go to bluechew.com, use the promo code BOOTLEG. All right? I'm talking free month, right to your doorstep, indiscreet packaging, no awkward doctor's visits. All right? It's all online. You don't have to worry about going and sitting in a waiting room and be like, hey, doc, my dick, I could use a little pep in my step, and then it's awkward. You got to look at this old fuck talking about your dick. He might ask you to pull it out. Who fucking knows what's going on? At Blue Chew, none of that's happening. BlueChew.com. And they also got the brand new mint-flavored chewable, which has vardenafil in it, which is the same active ingredient as Levitra and Staxin, which is a little more potent. A little more potent if you need the extra on top of the extra. You know what I mean? Get the mint chewable. Yeah, your wife will thank you. Your girlfriend will thank you. Your boyfriend will thank you. Whatever the fuck you're fucking will thank you. As long as it's legal, all right? Let's get back to the interview. Go to bluechew.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That's it.
There's some stuff that, you have to learn. And, when we're talking about Candace Owens and Kanye West and those people, those things break down their entire argument. You know what I mean? It's like there's no grace, there's no nothing. If you are black, if you are brown, if you had a problem, if you made a mistake, whatever, it's held over your head. And as though it's now justified for you to be dead. And that's not the way the legal system in this country works. That's not the way
not how it's supposed
anything should work. Right. You deserve to have a full life, make your mistakes, and learn from them.
I think obviously just taking Candace Owens and Kanye West out of the conversation, I think that the extreme of each side does extremely wild shit.
Yes.
Sure, I'll give you that.
That is very, that just kind of like each side turns each other off in a way that it removes any nuance to any middle ground or conversation
anymore.
Well, it's two different realities,
that are being
and it's also like on each side, like common sense is just gone.
I'll give you that too.
So it's like now it's like, okay, where are the conversations happening for people to kind of meet in the middle on some of these issues? And I'm not saying like issues in terms of like, obviously police brutality, everybody should agree that's fucked up. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of shit that like, I would say most people, if you were to take the craziest like wild fucking Trump supporter and you would take like, the wildest, no, not you. I mean, like,
there's some much further extremes than us.
The wild,
we're much closer to the middle than you realize. Okay.
Yeah, like the extreme left shit is pretty wild, and it gives like the insane. Entire left like such a bad. And the same way that the crazy right wing people, it just makes nuance and conversation almost obsolete, and in terms of like not being able to. I feel like the tribal aspect of it is so bad to where it's like, okay, well, we think this over here. So if we think this over here, like the vaccine thing to me was like one of those things that was so crazy because I saw people getting demonized for not wanting to do something to their own body. And I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. This is not a right wing or left wing thing. This is a personal decision. And I'm vaccinated.
But what you said that's important, you asked us about having to correct. Like we have to apologize with haste. Right? If we say something that it's the next show has to be the first 30 minutes got to be about that, right? It's required or our show is shit.
Right.
Like, what are you guys talking about? Y'all said this last week and it was trash. Y'all never addressed it again. Like, right. Yeah. But what you just said is the bar of this whole thing. The nuance doesn't exist anymore. It's all extreme this or not. When I was a kid and Reagan was the president, my mom did not agree with his politics, but her friends at work that did, they weren't beefing because there's points and platforms that political people campaign on. And for most of those, they're extreme because that's how they get their base riled up. Yeah. But in the middle, there used to be shit that everybody agreed was good.
Yes.
That does not exist anymore. So you bring up the vaccine. We're interviewing an epidemiologist. Mm-hmm. Right? She can tell you without any hesitation, straight to your face, that we all should have got vaccinated.
Right.
That does not mean that 100% of people that get vaccinated will live long, healthy lives.
Right.
But that's how it will be dissected.
Right.
100 people got vaccinated, 70 of them got sick, passed away, whatever.
Right.
And now that's the vaccine's fault. And that's just not how any vaccine has ever worked.
I think the problem with the
from
no, you're
to
right.
the measles
I think,
to chicken
I think the
pox
problem
to
with
everything.
the vaccine was that it was introduced as like an end all be all, like once you get this, you're good. And then they kept introducing more shots. And then on top of that, they were withholding the fact that if you already had COVID, that it was actually better than getting the vaccine.
Let me make sure that I paint this picture with you, Kevin.
Yeah.
The political landscape of the country at that time was that every single thing that made headlines had to be politicized and sold.
And it still is that.
Sure,
so that's the problem.
Yeah, I
But
don't know
bear
that
in
that's
mind,
gonna-
So
everyone's
like
at home.
to me,
There's
like
nothing else
I
to
would,
read.
I got vaccinated, but I was like, I'm not getting boosted, like at all. I'm straight, not getting boosted. I've had COVID fucking twice. I'm vaccinated. I'm good. But my kid, who's 16, is like, Dad's a Trumper. He's an anti-vaxxer.
you're also-
and I'm like, I what do you mean? I'm a healthy 30.
You're also reasonable.
Yeah, right.
That's
Most
the
people
problem.
aren't reasonable.
And I don't know when that part happened. That's my.
I think it happened in
used
once.
to be.
I think Trump is who really turned up each side.
Now you see why I don't rock with Buddy.
Yeah.
That's,
No,
that's why I was
that's
trying to say
what
the
happened.
political landscape of the country at the time.
Trump definitely did that, and I think that like he made it to where he made everything tribal.
Yeah.
Like, and it was already tribal.
Extreme tribal,
It was
though.
already tribal, but he made it crazy.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah, and I just think that like yeah, I don't know, man. I just think
Man.
we're in a place where politically like each side is batshit crazy at times. You know, I can say Joe Biden's done some good shit. I can also say he's done some bad shit.
As you
but
should.
you should be able to say that.
You should be critical of anybody who's in charge.
problem-
Especially that seat. You should be hypercritical.
Right. Like I voted for Joe Biden. I also think he's like not a great president. Now, is he a better president than Trump would have been? On most things, yes.
Let me
On the
say
things
this.
that are
Let me
most
say this.
important to me, yes.
I want to say this too, because you said something. I don't want the narrative to get out there the wrong way. Okay. You and me, we watched the presidential election in 2016.
Yeah, I
downstairs
voted
at
for
my house.
Bernie Sanders. Yeah.
Yes, and I want to make
Shout out
sure
to
that you
Bernie
said
Sanders.
that because you said Aiden, your son thought that you might be a Trumper or something like that. Kevin is not a Trumper. We watched
No.
the 2016
I mean, I
election
voted for
in
Joe
the crib.
Biden.
At the same
And I
time,
hate
just wanna
Joe
make sure
Biden.
nobody listening might think like, "Dang,
Listen,
this Kev."
Joe Biden was the worst candidate that the Democrats ran, and I still voted for his old ass.
I know, but I want to make sure people out there listening know that you never voted for Trump at all.
Nah,
So I was
nah,
making
nah,
sure
nah,
that
nah,
that
nah.
was stated.
No,
so,
of course not.
yeah.
No, but I just think that, like, for example, like if Trump does something good when he was president,
Mm-hmm.
if he did something good, be like, oh yeah, I agree with this. That doesn't mean you agree with him or you're a Republican.
Yeah, or you love him, yeah.
Right.
We
And
had-
then
we had to
is
say
that part, right? It's people subscribed to him, the person.
Right, it's the
So
cult
you
shit.
couldn't even-
He's a cult
yeah,
leader.
you couldn't even
It's like
speak about-
it's like the Kanye shit,
Yes,
but just
bro.
For white people.
I had people like DMing me in defense of this
think
man
Kanye's
they've
for
never
anybody else?
met.
No,
And
it's
I'm
wild.
like, yo, I know you and your kids.
crazy.
Like you're upset
It's
with me
crazy.
because I said something about this man that's true, that you've never met, that doesn't care about you, that you don't know. Like people really, really subscribe to him on like a zealot.
I think that the
type.
Trump thing got so out of hand that it got everyone else so much out of character that now, if you're on the conservative side of the aisle, now you can point at the other aisle and be like, well, you guys did this. You guys purposely, like the Hunter Biden shit is kind of like a black eye on media because they purposely withheld a real story collectively. Twitter, Facebook, New York Times came out
No,
and
I
admitted
know
it.
exactly what you're talking about.
And like the left shouldn't be doing that, right? We would
No one should be doing
nobody. But what I'm saying is like Trump was so crazy that it really felt like if he gets reelected, we don't know what's going to happen. It can get bad.
We'd have busted the seams.
That it made everyone else stoop to his level.
Yeah.
And now
compromise
everyone's
their-
hands are dirty.
Yeah.
Now that once
He moved
once
the
he
whole
showed,
country to the right.
Once he showed that there was no line he wouldn't cross.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like now it's like, okay, I mean, I hope that obviously, you know, there's somebody who runs besides Joe Biden that's, you know, younger and more able. What up, y'all? We got to stop the interview real quick. Tell you about our good friends at MyBookie. That's right, man. MyBookie is where you want to get this money and enjoy being a degenerate like myself. And it's the best time of the year to be a degenerate because NFL season is obviously we are in the midst of a crazy NFL season. NBA season just started. World Series is going down, and you can get your bets in right now. Go to MyBookie and sign up for a new account using the promo code BOOTLEG. That's BOOTLEG. You sign up right now. They will match your first deposit. That's right. Put in 1,000. Oh, they'll give you another 1,000 to gamble with. That's free money to gamble with. Let's get in on this action, man. NFL season. I'm loving this part of the year. So much good, just everything to bet on. Football, basketball, fucking UFC, NFL, baseball, whatever. Now is the best time to get your gamble on. So go sign up for a new account at MyBookie. Use that promo code BOOTLEG and double your deposit. Let's get back to the interview.
What you think about Gavin Newsom?
I think I lived here and it was terrible. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure Gavin Newsom will be the guy.
You think he better than what we got?
Yeah, for sure. But Gavin Newsom also like destroyed like most small businesses in California. Like all the restaurants I was going to, they're all closed. And it was all kind of, and you look like Florida's death rates were not any, I think if it's Newsom versus DeSantis, Newsom's going to have a hard time in that debate.
Well, listen.
I would like it to be.
I hope those aren't the
one of the things that I will say.
I would rather it be them two than Trump and who.
Yes.
As long as Trump is not in the cards, literally anything else will
even
be.
him
he hasn't
campaigning
gone
would
away.
be more damaging.
I just think it sucks because like you would think Kamala Harris would have taken the opportunity to like be the next person,
Sure.
but like she's not gonna win.
She's kind of faded to the background for
And,
what
then,
it's
and
worth.
the truth is, like I said, these media wars, now that we're playing this media game, we understand exactly how media works and how it shapes optics around people. I went from loving Kamala to despising her, to loving her and cheering for her, to despising her. And I realized looking back on all that, I'm like, okay, so when she got elected, this was great. And then she was like imprisoning black people at this crazy
She was doing
rate.
that before she got elected.
Sure,
but
sure.
yeah,
But you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to tell the story about how
No.
there's like ups
I mean,
and
look,
downs. Then she becomes the VP, and then it's like, oh, black.
That's
girl
why
magic.
it's important to have nuanced conversations in media.
Sure. And then this is why
There's a show called Breaking Points on YouTube. It's like a kind of like an old school conservative young dude and an old school like liberal lady.
Yeah, you told me about the show.
And the show's like they just do the news, and then at the end they each give their take. So like if you want to watch like their opinion on something, they'll find one thing to kind of like. But it's like you said, the media is weaponized in such a crazy way
that's
now.
Do they find a middle ground?
Yeah, or they just agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Which
is okay.
You were saying something though, the way the media space is right now, with the opportunity that we have with Civic Cipher, in the conversations that we can have, we understand that we both kind of share similar views, but we also recognize that there are other people, we call them our brothers and sisters,
Right.
and we mean that, who may not agree with us, but we have to get a message to them in a meaningful way that they will receive. And fire and brimstone is not going to do that.
That's why, like, it's a topic that I think like people, and I'm obviously pro-choice, but
How dare you?
no, but this is the thing, right? Is like if someone isn't pro-choice, that means that they literally think that abortion is murder. So if they literally think that, then you have to respect that they don't want it to happen.
That's
But the problem is if someone says that they are against abortion, then they all of a sudden they hate women. You know what I'm saying?
But the problem is what you said, though. Most of the people that come out on the other side of it, because if I'm going to approach you, let's talk about the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to approach you as anti-vaccine or pro, if I cannot have an intelligent, simple conversation with you on either side
Right.
of it, then what am I doing?
And my thing is I don't even think it's worth having the conversation with people who are anti-abortion because they literally think it's murder.
Yeah.
So if you think something is murder, then I get it.
You have
But
to be
there's-
consistent on that
How
all the
about
way
this?
through, though.
So I was describing sort of the temperament of our show, and I think that this point, so I appreciate it. I think this point helps us illustrate it. If someone has, like for instance, you mentioned the vaccine. if someone has an opinion on what they're going to do with their body, that sort of thing, we have to respect that. And I get it. We, of course, on the show, we recommended that, communities hardest hit by COVID,
Right,
take the vaccine. We had taken the vaccine. We both had COVID. We understood sort of what we're up against, and we did our due diligence in terms of the research, right, at the time. So making those recommendations or having those conversations were not necessarily rooted in someone else's oppression, right? We have conversations on our show. You know what I mean? You can have your difference of political beliefs, right? And I'll allow you those beliefs, provided they are not rooted in my oppression, right?
Right.
So when it comes to the abortion issue, which is a woman's issue, so none of us in theory should be great champions or great voices in that space. But in terms of, we all have women that we love in our lives, and we have platforms, and so we have to kind of walk that line as best we can, recognizing that other people have their opinions on what needs to happen if a woman is pregnant and does not want to have the baby. Those opinions, in theory, they should only exist provided they're not rooted in the oppression of some other group of people. And if you can make the case that I'm pro-abortion or I'm sorry, pro-life. Pro-life, exactly. And women look at that like, well, that decision is rooted in my oppression. That decision oppresses me. It limits what it is that I can do with my own body. I am a freestanding human being endowed with consciousness from our
to
common
those
creator.
people though,
It doesn't matter. I get it.
It's not just her body.
Sure, whatever. But the thing is,
And
when we have these conversations,
I guess what I'm saying is like what we were talking about earlier, right? If someone tells me that they're pro-life, like I'm not gonna just assume that they're a terrible person.
No. But
the problem is like if somebody came out and said I'm pro-abort or I'm pro-life, right? They automatically get this whole entire
right, and that's what I'm saying. We don't have to write people off.
That's politics' fault too, though.
for sure.
Well, let me finish. We don't have to write people off for feeling how they feel, but we cannot give equal footing if someone else's opinion is rooted in the oppression of someone else by the nature of our show, because that has been used to oppress Black people since Black people arrived on these shores. That formula, that format. And so we, by the virtue of the show that we do, the nature of the show, we cannot do that. So if someone else has a separate opinion, we have to still call them our brothers and our sisters who have a different opinion.
Right.
We do our best to illustrate their points on our show, and oftentimes those points have value. They're credible points. They do not reflect the reality that.
I mean, listen, my thing is if someone's religious, right?
Yeah, religion is a great one.
Religious is like, yo, I think that the baby's being murdered. So you want me to co-sign that? I personally am an atheist, so I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. You know what I'm saying? I don't care.
He gives like smoke them.
As long as it's a certain, obviously within a certain range. I think the late term abortion is just crazy.
Yeah, that's a little wild. But
I just think that it's kind of like back to what I was saying about the vaccine thing, where it's like, yo, like there's nurses who are heroes during the pandemic who got fired because they wouldn't get vaccinated. And guess what? They were right.
See, you talking about something I don't know about. So
There's actual nurses,
sure,
people who work in hospitals that could not keep their job.
I just have not come across that story myself or those stories myself.
There's people who lost their job.
Listen, I know that again. This is the point we're making. There's credible conversations. There's credible ideas and beliefs on both sides. On the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, it's a show that I do every day. I have a maybe twice a week feature that I do. It's called One More Thing. So check that out at binnews.com or iheart.com. You'll see me. I'm the one with the afro next to Katie Couric. Anyway, on that platform, when I do that show, I say something that I believe really works in this space. And this is sort of the temperament we have on Civic Cipher as well. I say, listen, I don't profess to be right. I would love to hear you, our listeners' thoughts on this. And maybe somewhere in the middle, we'll find our way together forward. Right? Our way forward together, right? And so this is kind of the formula that we have to have. Bear in mind, on Civic Cipher, we have to take a show that is talking to music
Radio
programmers
stations, right,
and ask them to turn the music off for an hour a week.
Right.
Sometimes they bury it in the middle of the night. That's fine. We'll take it. But we have to convince these people to let us have conversations in spaces where they don't exist.
Right.
And in doing that, we have to bear in mind that these people's opinions, these oftentimes wealthy white men, their opinions politically may differ from ours, and yet and still they may listen to this show. And we need them to recognize that their opinion is at least being represented. It will be challenged, but it will be represented, and we will do our best to represent their opinion fairly. And we will not be unfair. That's one thing that we try our best not to do.
You know, obviously having some sort of conversation is just, I feel like it's important.
We do that as often as we can. We get guests.
The troubling thing, and I hate to keep saying the word nuance, but Kevin said it, and it's important, right? If I'm a fireman,
right,
and I no longer believe in the science that water puts fire out, I can't be a fireman anymore.
Right.
If I'm on the clergy and I go to seminary and some scientist convinces me that parts of the Bible are untrue, then I can't sit on the clergy anymore.
Right.
If you are a medical professional,
Right.
doctor, nurse, and you don't believe in the science of medicine, then you probably shouldn't be a nurse anymore, right? Your job in that space.
Yeah, but the science of medicine, the science of that vaccine has been changed so much on the CDC websites, and there's like monoclonal antibodies, and there's a lot of shit that they purposely withheld in some of these states that science-wise, if I'm a nurse and I'm like, yo, well, the science says if you have had COVID, then you're more safe than if you get the vaccine.
Then you can practice.
So my
other
thing is
forms
that
of
there's
medicine.
right, but my thing is like with the vaccine thing, just you could just go through and look at the way CDC changed their shit from like week to week. So the science changed over and over and over.
But you can provide data on both sides of that point.
No, 100%, and that's why to me,
vaccinated and boosted and whatever, there might have been some very harmful effects to that with Kevin that were not the truth with Quentin.
No, and I think that that's why it's like, okay, like this isn't a one size fits all thing with the vaccine. It wasn't a one size fits all thing, and that's how it was sold to to people.
Well, listen, on our show, we said, listen, if you are a healthy person, you know, whatever, you can make these decisions. If you are a person who's sick
if you're
and
elderly, if you're
this doesn't
old,
work for
no,
you,
for sure.
Then you don't
Yeah,
have to get
if
it.
you have-
But our recommendation.
What should have been provided, though, like in all things, is the choice to do whichever one that you wanted. And there's the difference in saying if you are a person that's at risk, you should get the vaccine, versus saying no one should because there might be
I also
side
think
effects.
the difference of saying
dangerous.
if you're a person at
die
risk,
just by getting
you should get it, as opposed to saying you have to get it.
Correct. That's what I said.
When you tell people they have to do something,
there should be a choice.
they're going to be like, wait, what?
We had to do that. Listen, now at this point, it's different from cutting a break, 30-second break, talking up a ramp into, some new, Lil Baby record or something like that, where you're not talking about, the stakes aren't that high.
Right.
When you're having conversations that are life and death about police killing people,
For
about
sure.
The political
You can't just
process,
have those
about
in 30
things,
seconds.
You have
Right.
to, and then you have to bear in mind that other people have a different vantage point. This is something that I learned, but had to learn even deeper levels of that
With
truth
the show, yeah.
doing this show.
Right.
And we feel like we are setting up a formula and a template, one that will carry into Hip Hop Weekly magazine, one that will carry into other spaces on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast. I told you exactly the temperament that I have, where, listen, somewhere in the middle, we'll find our way forward, okay?
Of course.
You don't have to be me. I'm not a Trump person. I'm not a Kanye. You don't have to do it like me. But listen what I'm saying, and cooler heads will prevail. There's reasonable... There's logic and reason on this side of the argument. And even if you don't come all the way over, you'll at least see, if you allow me the same...
If you listen with open ears,
Yeah, and recognize that I am a human being endowed with consciousness from our common creator. I am just like you. I want my sons to watch me grow old and then bury me at the end of my life.
Yeah, of course.
Right? If you want that and I want that, then we have more in common than we have
100%.
as a difference. And so you can listen to my vantage point, my perspective, my reality. I can share it with you. And then in the middle, because I have no problem compromising with you. This is something Black people are very good at, especially in this country's history. Listen, we don't need everything. We don't need much soon. We just need to keep moving in the right direction.
It just has
and
to
we let our brothers and sisters who are in power, controlling a lot more than we are at the time, catch up with where we're going. You know what I mean? But we have found our way through a lot of the muck that this country was born out of.
Right.
And Civic Cipher, I believe, continues in that tradition with the help of, our listeners, with the help of, the people that support us along the way. Kevin, you included, Dr. Westenberg consults with us.
Yep.
Shout out Chris Thompson from the Black Information Network. Shout out Tony Coles from Black Information Network. Shout out, all the programmers around the country that carry our show, and the programmers that are flirting with carrying our show as well. We are going to do our best to continue to do right by everyone. And as soon as we learn something new that conflicts with something old, we will address it. And if we learn something new that informs our path forward, we will do our best to guide the folks that listen to us that way. But you need to believe in the heart and the temperament and the tone of the show in order to ride this wave with us. But we feel like we are committing our lives to a cause that will make significant changes for all of us, not just Black and brown people, but all of us, because we do feel that our brothers and sisters from the Caucasian tribe deserve to learn how to be the best version of themselves as they possibly can be. They deserve that. And if we can show them what that looks like from our perspective, then we feel like they welcome that too. This is why we're on the air in Massachusetts and in Vermont, places that, what I'm saying, where there's not, Mississippi, that makes sense. Louisiana, New Orleans, that makes sense.
Detroit, Atlanta.
Those make sense. But, places where people are really like, hey, we'd love to carry the show. It's because of those type of people as well. So
shout out to them.
If you are listening to my voice, you are my sister. If you are listening to my voice, you're my brother. We are trying to do something here. Support us. CivicCipher.com, BINnews.com, HipHopWeekly.com.
What's the Instagrams for everybody?
Hip Hop Weekly, Civic Cipher, and
I am Q Ward
at Ramses
Ja. Yeah,
there it is.
I don't even think I said my name.
You're allowed to, you guys put everything on YouTube too, right?
Yeah. We're revamping the YouTube right now, but by the time you hear this, we'll have a whole new approach to our YouTube because we really want to make sure that we're hitting people the way that we need to on that platform. We created a radio show, and it's grown beyond kind of the borders. Yeah,
and if you're out there selling White Lives Matter shirts, you're about to get sued. Be clear.
By Morris. Go ahead.
Just sue Kanye. Just do it.
No, man. If we see someone profiting,
I got a feeling he's gonna try to sell those shirts.
Well, he's got to talk to us first. Otherwise, I don't think anybody wants.
You don't have to
we don't
talk
want
to
that.
her first.
Listen, we don't want to hurt anybody.
I prefer him jump off the porch.
Listen, we don't want to
come
hurt
see
anybody.
us afterwards. Honestly.
Well, there it is.
Yeah, man. So
Civic Cipher. Appreciate y'all pulling up.
We appreciate you,
Love
bro.
you, Kevin.
Boom.